Could it be that Bitcoin might actually break some of our tax systems and made it possible that every single Bitcoin transaction is no longer taxed? Today, I talked with Robin, not myself, an actual tax consultant that understands the tax law and is practicing it in real life. And we talked about how Bitcoin can actually eliminate taxes, how Bitcoin itself should never be taxed in any system because it's money. We talked also about the Laffer curve, how taxes have been developed in history, and what you personally can do with Bitcoin and taxes and optimize your own tax rate. Enjoy. Hi, Robin. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Robin. All good here. How about you?
I think we should, in every question answer, we should always call our names out. Like, hi, Robin, how are you doing? I love that.
In the UK, we can do it as a drinking game. So anyone who's listening, every time they hear the word Robin, they have to do a shot.
that will be quite successful, I think. But yeah, before we get into all the topics, maybe give us some brief overview for the few people that haven't seen your stuff and are not aware of what you're doing, who you are, and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Okay, yeah. So I'm Robin Thatcher. On X, I'm known as the Bitcoin and crypto accountant. So I'm a UK accountant working specifically in Bitcoin, but I do work in crypto as well. Boo, I know, but I do, everyone needs their taxes doing. So I work with HMRC in the UK on policy and regulation as well. I'm part of Crypto UK, which is a trade group where we sort of advise HMRC on policy and tax rules. Myself, I'm a big Bitcoiner. That's why I always say, I do the tax on crypto, but I don't touch crypto anymore. I had my phase. So yeah, I've sort of come around very similar to your own journey, actually. I sort of came around through Bitcoin, sort of thinking it was a bit of a Ponzi scheme. And through trying to disprove Bitcoin, I proved Bitcoin to myself. So I sort of came around through that route. And now I'm a big Bitcoiner. I go to events and speak at events in the UK and hopefully in a bit of the EU this year. I think I'm speaking hopefully at Prague. Martin, if you're listening. And yeah, so I'll be out and about at the events as well. It's always good. The Bitcoin community is the best community in the world. I'll say that as well.
Yeah, the Bitcoin community is quite fascinating. Like everyone, like 99% of people greet you with open arms. I've said that already a lot on the podcast. All the things that I'm doing right now is only possible because the Bitcoin community is super open and generous. Otherwise, all the things that I'm doing now might happen in like 5 years because it just like takes more time. But I wanted to start with an interesting question. I think a lot of people think about that because they see Bitcoin as money. And in money, it does not make sense to be taxed with transactions. If you just have money, you just like have it and you can spend it and you can do whatever you want. Now there's talks in the USA about like de minimis, how is it called? Like the thing that up until $600, you don't have to pay capital gains tax. There's, for example, in Germany and in the Czech Republic, the rule, if you hold Bitcoin for a certain amount of years, you don't have to pay capital gains tax. It was also true in Austria. If you still have Bitcoin in Austria from before February 2021, you also don't have to pay capital gains tax on that. Otherwise, you do have to. And I have that long-term theory that Bitcoin will be only very minimal or not even at all taxed in the very long run. I'm not talking like this year or like the next 5 years. I'm not talking like 20, 30 years in the future. How do you see taxes progressing up until now, the last like 16 years on Bitcoin? And how do you think taxes will be developed around Bitcoin in the future?
Great question. And there's a lot to digest there. So how's it progressed over the last 16 years? Well, certainly in the UK, but given what you've just said as well, various countries and the way they've sort of gone from, they've drawn a line in the sand at a certain point. So in the UK about 2018-19 was when they first really recognized it as an asset, along with what we call crypto assets. That was when they first started recognizing it for tax purposes. Basically, before that, in the UK, it was gambling. And I think a lot of governments sort of followed that path where they just didn't really pay attention to it before that. It wasn't big enough, it wasn't interesting enough, and it wasn't going to generate them enough money. After that sort of date, which, like you said, with Austria, when they sort of said with 2021, they've sort of drawn a line in the sand and gone, actually, there's money to be made or tax revenues to be made here, and they've started taxing it. I think the problem with specifically the UK, but I think other jurisdictions could follow this as well, is that they don't separate Bitcoin from other cryptos at this point, which is one of the problems that we need to address, which, to your point, I'll come to in a bit about future taxation. I think that's going to address one of the bigger sides of it. Until they do that and they group it all together, the problem you've got is you're taxing a massive amount of assets in one pot. I think that sort of comes to your point about money as well. I mean, I think Bitcoin is money. I don't think it should be taxed. I think taxing it is wrong. But I think getting to that point comes from a lot of understanding, a lot of research, a lot of podcasts, a lot of listening to people. And our governments aren't at that stage yet. They're nowhere near that stage. Their advisors aren't at that stage. So the difficulty is getting them to that stage. And to your point, I think it is a long way in the future. What I see happening is separation of Bitcoin from crypto as Bitcoin becomes more established, and you can't, I'll give an example, and please don't hate on me, anyone listening for this, but XRP, I don't see the utility of it. I don't understand it. I'm never going to invest in it. So why would XRP be in the same bracket as Bitcoin from a tax perspective when they're two very different assets in the way they work? So I think when you decouple Bitcoin from the rest of crypto from a taxation purpose, it becomes a lot easier and simpler to give what I'd call progressive tax policies. Now, the other thing I'd like to add here is from a personal point of view, I genuinely believe that taxation is theft. Okay, I don't think taxation is fair. It was in the UK, it was a temporary measure brought in to fund the Napoleonic Wars in 1799, and it's remained since. Just to reiterate that, it was a temporary measure, and it's remained since 1799. So the taxation as it stands at the moment doesn't make sense, not just of Bitcoin in general. So I'm happy to pay tax, but I think I need to know where my tax is going, what it's paying towards, why I'm paying so much. All of those things, I think, are answers that most countries can't give at the moment. So I think overall, internationally, tax needs reform. I think when you reform taxes with a new asset like Bitcoin, you inevitably see change that will be progressive tax policies towards Bitcoin. We need to, once governments really understand Bitcoin, I think they'll want people to invest in it. And by wanting people to invest in it, you give them tax breaks. That naturally comes. That's a good way to do it. I think that will come certainly over time. And then with that, I also think the asset classification may change. I think as Bitcoin progresses to become such a dominant asset in the global world, I think the tax of it will change. It will take one country, whether that's a major country or a smaller country. One country will make a significant change and then others will follow. What we find with the developed countries, I'm talking UK, Canada, Australia, the USA, once they make a change in their tax policies, generally the others follow. It takes years, but the others do follow. So I think you're on the right track. I think that's what we're going to see. But I think we have, as Bitcoiners and me personally, I have a bit of a fight on my hands, and that's a fight I'm willing to have over the next 10 to 15 years to tell people that this needs to happen.
I like that. And it's also, when we think about taxes, and I love that most tax consultants that I meet are saying that taxes are theft, which is an hilarious thing. But like, why were they introduced in the first place, and like, why is it theft? I personally really do dislike taxes. I right now just see it as a cost of living in that country, almost like okay, yeah, like if I want to live here, I guess I have to pay that. If I don't want to pay that, I can move somewhere else. I can be like in multiple jurisdictions in not one country longer than like 6 months, and or move to Dubai, or like go somewhere else. Like there's many different avenues you can go through, especially if you have work like me that It's just like I can be anywhere. I just need a white wall behind me. I can find this everywhere in the world. But I choose to stay in Austria because it's beautiful. I like the Austrian country. It's really, really nice. And the taxes that I have to pay, I see it as kind of the cost of the country and the thing that I get, the nice environment, all of that. But at the same time, I'm like, it's such an overblown system, and cutting the taxes in half would probably be really good, because then the government would be forced to save a lot more money. Now, some countries are already doing that. Austria is doing some interesting things where they cut down on spending. I think for the first time since I watch politics since a very long time, where I actually see a government saving a little bit, even though they still spend more than they make, but they're trying a little bit here and there to actually save, but not enough by any means. But let's go in there, because you briefly mentioned it, like why they were introduced in the first place as a temporary measure, and why are they still here? And then it's like, I guess, theft.
So from my perspective, the reason I think that I'm with you, so I don't mind paying tax. Okay, I live in a democracy, and I think a democracy works. But I think the democracies that we currently live in have been going for hundreds of years without change, or I hate to use the word reform, but reform. Because what you need really is to start again. We've got so many historic principles that have just rolled over and continued because they've always been there. So to give you an example, income tax in the UK started to fund the Napoleonic War in 1799. It was a temporary measure. The government needed money to fund fighting Napoleon, right? It's continued since then, because why would a government that's making money and getting money in stop it? They have no reason to stop it. But actually, what's been lost along the way is the reason that they did it. Now, I get they did it to fund a war. I'm not saying we should do it to fund wars. I don't agree with that. But I'm happy to do it if it funds certain things about the lifestyle that affects me. If it funds government and the government is functional, I'm happy to pay tax. If it funds a lifestyle, like you said, you have a nice lifestyle, you enjoy your life, you know, your potholes are fixed on your road, you've got nice towns to go to, all of those things, police are in the community. All of these things, they contribute to a lifestyle that you have. If I'm paying towards that through income tax, I've got no problem doing it. What I think has happened historically and moving forward is that you've increased government sizes. Government spending doesn't really get reviewed because what they spend their money on, it doesn't necessarily change. To your point, again, you talked about spending cuts. They so rarely happen. But why do they so rarely happen? Do they ever look... I'm not in government, but do they ever look at what they're spending and go, actually, do we need to spend that? Local councils, do you need 500 people working for your local council? Maybe you do. Maybe you need that funding and you need all those people. But does anyone actually look at it from the bottom up? And I sometimes think if we started again, we could almost start from the bottom up and reverse engineer it and say, well, actually, how much money do you need as a government? Therefore, how much should you be taxing? Because we've got this thing in the UK at the moment, specifically, I'd say, is that taxes never go down. They just gradually go up. But the quality of what we're paying for isn't going up. It's decreasing rapidly, I'd probably say. Obviously, in the UK, we're a bit different. We have the NHS, but the NHS is struggling. It needs more money. Now, there isn't any more money for it to get, but there would potentially if we cut our spending down, if we stopped borrowing so much money. I would genuinely make the point to you here, Robin. In the UK, I think we pay quite a lot of tax, actually. But I would happily pay more tax over the next 5 years if it meant that my lifestyle was going to get better in 5 years' time for me, for the next generation, for my kids, all of those sorts of things. Because at the moment, all we see is a gradual decline, and we don't see a way out of that gradual decline. So I'd like to see progressive tax policies that show that we're moving forward, even if that means paying more in the short term. Because at the moment, all that's happening is the expression is we're papering over cracks. And that's all we're doing. In 3 years' time, the next government's going to have the same problem. And I think that's, to an extent, an international problem. I think we never just look at what we do and how we do it and start again. And that's probably what we need to do.
I also see, because it sounds easy of like, hey, we want to cut down government spending. But I actually see now the last year what is happening in Austria. The government actually tries to cut here and there on government spending, and opposition goes really hard against that. And what has been happening, all the government parties have lost a lot in polls, and the opposition got a lot stronger, like a lot stronger. Now, I'm actually for the opposition party more than the government parties in general, but it's just like it almost seems there's an incentive to not cut down government spending, because this means someone that got money gets now less money, even being this like cutting down on pensions, cutting down on social spending, cutting down on like subsidies for people, and cutting down on other things. Like I have a like, I don't have an answer to that at all. I'm just like super interested, because like it seems like there's an incentive to keep on spending, and there will be a point where just like everything breaks down.
So what you've said there is really true, and the way I would word it is, what is the government's incentive, right? So the government's incentive should be to make the country a better place. But the one thing the government has to do and wants to do, and that's reiterated by your point, is they want to preserve power. They don't want to lose power. So what's gone wrong there is the sight of the end goal is lost. If I was in government, for example, and you get a set time generally, say I had 5 years, I would say to myself, right, and I'd say it to the public, right, we're going to have a pretty tough 5 years, but at the end of the 5 years, we're going to be better off, okay? But what that would mean is I'm not going to get re-voted in, and I'd have to accept that. I'm not going to keep power. My job is to make the country a better place, and I know that in 5 years I will have done that. But what's happening at the moment, to exactly what you've said, is the opposition are then increasing their popularity because they're going to make things better for people. And actually they're not. They're just going to paper over the cracks. So all they're doing is they're changing that. They're increasing spending again. They're increasing borrowing so that they can maintain power.
I mean, I think the only one example, and he is highly controversial, is Javier Milei, that actually slowly started to cut down on government spending, I think, and he still got re-elected, which was a surprise to many of the observers, of the people that observed it. Now, I'm not in Argentina. I've not a deep understanding what his politics are. The only thing that I know is the people that I know from Argentina telling me that they actually like him, and that he actually cuts down a lot on spending of the government, not as much as he promised, not at all. Like he also said, like he will destroy the central bank. Argentina's central bank is still around, so there's a lot of things that he hasn't done. But this is, I don't know if you have observed him the last 2 years, but this is for me the first one that kind of seems to be successful in like cutting down spending and still being elected.
I think the only thing I would say with Milei that I'm aware of is that he had a better opportunity than most, because Argentina's gone through such heavy periods of hyperinflation. So the people there are probably used to a lot more pain in their lifestyle than in certain countries that we would see. I think I listened to a podcast recently of someone who traveled to Argentina, and they said that the Argentinian people have such a different outlook on life to us. They don't, for example, they've been through hyperinflation, so saving their money isn't worth a lot to them in terms of spending power. So they're quite happy to spend it. Their restaurants are quite buoyant. Their lifestyle is quite buoyant because they live for the moment. That was what was observed by someone else, not by me. I found that quite interesting. But obviously, having been through those periods of hyperinflation, maybe that makes Milei's job a little bit easier because they've already had that pain, and he can't be any worse than that, surely.
I mean, Elon tried it also with Doge in America, and he kind of got booed out of the government somehow, or kicked out of the government somehow, because his businesses really suffered from all the political activists. So I don't know, it seems to be not a popular thing. But I really hope that we get to the stage where Bitcoin shouldn't be taxed. I really have that big hope, and I know like there are a few people that say like no, like it will never happen, like it will be a money pot. But for me, it's always, I think Sailor brought that example once of the boats that were in some small island, and they were rich people coming into this island, and they were spending a lot of money in the tourist areas. But then at some point, the people that lived there was like, okay, why don't they pay taxes here if they use all the facilities here? And then they actually taxed those people. And then the day where the tax got activated, all the boats were leaving, which kind of shows that if you have capital that can just flee the country, like in a very easy way, as it is with Bitcoin, as it is with a boat, it is harder to tax that. It's harder to tax capital that just flees the country. That's why I guess governments really like to promote real estate as an investment, because this literally can't flee. Even if you sell it, someone else holds it then. So it doesn't really matter for the government who holds it. How do you think about this kind of like fleeing capital of Bitcoin and them being forced to basically not tax it, to be incentivized for Bitcoin to be in their country?
I think it depends, first of all, on the future of Bitcoin. I think when you've got, maybe not my generation, but the generation before me, you know, the 20, 25-year-olds now, when they start coming into government, I think you've got a better chance of not taxing Bitcoin, because they'll be more progressive. They'll have grown up with this asset and they'll understand it a lot more. The problem is now people, even my age, 40 something years old, they're not going to have grown up with Bitcoin. So it's a big adjustment to them for a digital currency. The other thing I'll add to your point about the island, it's a very good point. That recently Thailand brought in 0% capital gains tax on Bitcoin. And I thought this was a very, very clever move, because what Thailand's done is they've basically gone, if you're going to flee your country with capital, we want you to come to ours. We don't want to tax you. We just want you to spend money here. And it's a clever move. It's a good way to get money in there, because if I'm a Bitcoiner and I'm saying, right, I've got loads of Bitcoin, I don't need to work again, I want to go somewhere where I'm not going to get taxed on if I want to sell it, but I'm going to go somewhere that you know that's quite beautiful. Well, Thailand ticks all those boxes. All of a sudden, you can go and get a lot for your money there, and you can live out a happy life, no doubt. So what they've done is they've attracted me to their country. They're not going to get tax revenue from me, but they're going to get money from me, indirect tax revenue, you know, sales taxes, all of those things. I'm still spending money in that country. So all of those businesses that I'm spending money at generate tax. So it's all going into their economy. Now, again, to what you've just said, that creates a domino effect. Eventually, over time, if Thailand does generate a lot of Bitcoiners, and in the future Bitcoin grows, which we know it will, the amount of Bitcoiners grow, which we know it will, then suddenly Thailand becomes more attractive to those people, and you've got a bigger pool of people. And then you've got other countries that are going to go, well, actually, why are they going to Thailand? Well, that's because they're not taxing Bitcoin. And then suddenly you've got other countries that are going to go, well, maybe we should try not taxing Bitcoin and see if it attracts more people. And then you've got that ripple effect. It takes a long time. We're talking tens of years, not years, tens, decades. But over that time, other countries will adopt it. And then you've got a choice. If you're a UK, USA, France, all of those big countries, Switzerland, Austria, all of them, all of this capital that's fleeing, because we're going to have lots of Bitcoin millionaires in the future, all of that capital that's fleeing, you've then got an option. You either create policies that keep them there, or you force them into the other countries. So that's where I see it sort of going. I think that those countries eventually be forced into putting better tax policies in to keep the capital in the country. What they do with property, specifically in the UK, but certainly in other countries as well, is even if you leave as a person, your property is taxed in the UK. So if you own UK property, wherever you are in the world, you're taxed on it. You can't take that tax revenue elsewhere. So to your point, that's a very good point. It keeps it in the UK. They can't do that with Bitcoin. So it creates a bigger problem. So the only way to solve that is to create progressive tax policies that keep the Bitcoiners where they are.
What are progressive tax policies? What do you mean by that?
Progressive tax policies, it just means that policies that are going to create positive changes to the economic environment that you're in. So in the UK, progressive tax policies might be, well, actually, we're going to reduce tax, but reducing tax generates more revenue into the economy, which therefore increases the amount of money we're actually going to make. Because, for example, there's a sort of unwritten rule that if you limit businesses or say that over a certain point they're going to pay more tax, like they go up 10% when they reach 100 grand or something like that, what happens is you get a lot of businesses that will stay below 100 grand because they just go, well, I don't want to pay the extra tax. I don't want to work harder to get less. So I'm just going to stay there. I'm happy there. What you do by reducing those taxes is you say to those people, the harder you work, you're going to benefit, but also we're going to benefit. That's what a progressive tax policy does. By getting Bitcoin, as I say, in the UK, we have a lot of taxes. So there's VAT, which you pay on most items you buy, which is probably the most significant one. But if I'm a Bitcoiner and I've made a lot of money off my Bitcoin investment, and then I've got a lot of money left over and I pay no tax on it, what I'm going to do is spend that money. And by spending that money, I create VAT revenue. I create more revenue for the businesses that are going to get that revenue because they're making more profit and paying more tax. So it's about thinking about the longer term, not the shorter term. The shorter term is how much revenue you make. The longer term can be, well, how much more will people spend or make, and therefore have more tax to pay if we have the right tax policies in place.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called MicroSeed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With MicroSeed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. How would you actually, I've thought about that question like sometimes already, but how would you design a new country from scratch, their tax policies? If you have to kind of make some income to make some kind of things, or would you just say like, let's try it without taxes?
I would start without taxes, definitely. I would build from the bottom up. I'm a real big believer in the moment. This is in business, but in government, in life, is that the biggest problem is when people say, why do you do something that way? Because we've always done it that way. That's the wrong answer. What we need to do is find out why we should do it that way. So I think in a democracy that tax is likely a cost of living. I think that makes sense. I think you need it. But I think you need to know what you're paying for in a lot more detail. So that's why I'd start from the bottom up. So if I was going to, when you said it, I was thinking of, if you've seen Joe Bryan's video, I was thinking of what's the problem and putting myself in Satoshi's shoes on the little island. I'd start off with nothing. And then as we have a cost that's required, you know, healthcare or government or all of these things, we would start building tax on that and how we get that revenue. But for me, it wouldn't be a decision of one person, and it wouldn't be a decision of a government as such. I'd probably want the people to decide via I only learned recently that in Switzerland, I think you get a referendum if you get over 100,000 votes against something that's going to go into law. So I'd start something like that. If a percentage of the population wanted a referendum on whether we should do something, I'd put it to referendum. And then the control lies with the people. And I think that would be a good thing. Although I'm not sure that every person in the world would want to choose their own destiny. I think that's human nature as well.
I think, yeah, like Switzerland is one of the, I think, the best examples for direct democracy. It works good, people are informed, and they have very good measures in place for direct democracy. We had, I think, one or two politicians already from Switzerland on the show. But I 100% agree, like eliminating taxes and basically introducing a service fee is a very good way. And I like the word fee more than taxes, because fee implies that I'm paying for something specific. Like, okay, I do not want to get rid of my own trash, so I want to pay a fee for someone getting my trash. I want to have nice roads when I'm driving with a car. I'm paying someone to make the roads nice. like there's specific fees that I'm willing to pay. Like the same thing as like the StreamYard tool that we are now using. It's not free. I have to pay a fee to use it because someone has to maintain it, update it, and all of that. Like that makes sense. Taxes is like maybe for a social safety net. I can get around that, where there might just people that really need it, that have some incapabilities, that need the social safety net. But it's a hard discussion, because then there's a lot of people that try to misuse the social safety net, and then the people that actually need it get scrutinized, because like it gets like lower for them, it's not as good for them. So there's a lot of complicated topics in there, but I think the only real reason for like a general tax for me is a social safety net, and I think we don't have to put 50%, maybe 5% taxes on that.
I'd agree. And I think that's a good way to look at it. I think in the UK, what we have is a real complex tax system and loads of taxes that are taxed on different things. So to your example, we call, when you pay for your bins and roads, I think that comes under council tax, which is a separate tax from your income tax. So then you've got your income tax that goes to the government, and you've got inheritance taxes, and you've got all these things. I think it should just be one flat tax that you pay. It goes towards X, Y, and Z, whatever that is. And then, like I say, if there's things that you need to contribute towards that needs more money for anything, then that should be put to vote. I mean, one of the things, obviously, everyone talks about wars, and it's easy to talk about wars because, you know, there's political reasons why countries get involved in wars that they shouldn't do. You know, UK funds certain things within Ukraine. I'm sure we fund certain things in Russia as well, if I looked in the detail. But all of those things need to be communicated to the general public. The other thing that happens in the UK that we certainly saw during COVID times was you end up with people in power take advantage of their power. So, for example, it's not, if I'm an MP, I can sell a contract to my friend at a higher price because he's my friend, and he can give me a cut of that contract. But actually, the person that's paying is the public via the public money that comes in. And that's a big problem, I think. I think we need people that are accountable within power, that can say where the money's being spent. Like you say, it's a fee. It's being paid on this. It's being paid for the police or whatever it is. And then we can decide if it adds the value that we want it to our lives.
100%. I know this is different from every jurisdiction. Like UK is different from Austria. Austria is different than America, Canada, or like Australia. But are there general tax tips that you can actually like give to people, other than like I don't know, like because like you buy it, you sell it, maybe not selling is probably a good idea, then there's no capital gains tax on it?
Well, definitely, I would think worldwide, if you don't, at the moment, there's not many countries that I'm aware of that offer what we call unrealized gains taxes, where if you've not sold anything, you pay tax. Australia were talking about bringing it in. I'm not sure if they have brought it in yet. That last year they were talking about bringing it in. I think one of the issues, and this is to your point about Bitcoin not being taxed, I think one of the issues we will see is that countries will make it worse before it gets better. And I do see that unrealized gains tax is a possibility. Because what we have at the moment in Australia, what they looked at bringing in was it's almost a wealth tax, but it's unrealized gains tax on wealth over $3 million. So $3 million in the UK, that's about £1.5 million. That's not really a significant wealth anymore. It's not what I'd call a high net worth individual. And the problem with that is when you bring in tax on that, it's unrealized gains tax. So if I had, let's use an example. If I had 100 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin, let's say that's $10 million. Yeah, it's a lot of money on paper, but it doesn't mean I live my lifestyle like I've got 10 million. It doesn't mean that I have 10 million in my bank. So what you end up with is if someone decides to tax me on that, what's my unrealized gains on that? If Bitcoin moves 10% a year, that's one Bitcoin I could be taxed on. And I'm not going to have that one Bitcoin to physically pay the tax. So I've then got to sell my Bitcoin to pay that tax. So I've got less Bitcoin because the government wants to tax me on unrealized gains. I think that's a realistic possibility in the future of Bitcoin. I genuinely do. I don't think all countries will do it, but I think that before they understand it, they're going to fight it a little bit more. But one thing to your point, anyone can at the moment buy Bitcoin, keep it, and potentially not pay any tax on it. And I would say that's a good tactic. What the future of Bitcoin should be is you don't need to sell it. You can loan against it. Loaning against any asset is not taxable as long as ownership doesn't change. In the future, I think that will be much more likely to happen. As you grow, the size of this asset, it's the equivalent of having a house, right? If I had a house that I bought for, I don't know, 100,000, and in 15 years' time, because I bought it in the right place at the right time, it's worth 5 million. I might not necessarily sell that house, but I can get a mortgage on that house to get money out of it. As long as I repay the mortgage every month, I can get a mortgage. So I've suddenly got a £5 million house or a $5 million or whatever it is, and I can pull maybe up to $4 million out of it. So I don't need to sell the house and realize the gain to do that. I can get $4 million on a mortgage from it. I just need to be able to service the mortgage. If I service the mortgage, I mean make the repayments every month. So potentially I can get money out as long as I can repay it in the right way, because usually what happens is the money you repay with comes out of taxable income. You have to make money to make those payments, which means that that's taxable income. So that's generally the way any tax system works. So certainly with Bitcoin, if you can buy, hold it, never sell it, then you'll be in a position where you don't have to pay taxes and you can grow your wealth systematically without ever doing anything.
Yeah, to your point, like unrealized capital gains tax and wealth taxes are horrible incentives, because then you're incentivized to spend it and not have a lot of wealth, which is horrible for society, because then we have people with less capital and less strength. Then also we need citizens, we need people that have the most possible strength. If you have a country where everyone has a lot of money there, a lot of capital to deploy, it's a very strong country, because then people can fund their own companies, fund their own projects, and can do actually a lot of it with it. So having capital is something very, very important. And I hate that notion that is in politics somehow, that like, oh, we need some inflation to incentivize people to spend it. We need unrealized capital gains tax to incentivize people to spend their money. Like, we don't need that. We shouldn't incentivize people to spend their money. We should just let those that actually want to spend something on something that is really valuable spend their money, and otherwise not. The whole notion of like, we need the economy to grow, so we need to incentivize people to spend it, is for me like so weird, and it does not make sense at all for me.
It's a systemic problem, though. I think, I'm not sure, I can't necessarily speak for politicians in other countries as such, but in the UK, we have a big problem with politicians and MPs and people in power don't understand the basic economics. As to your point, basic economics, you need people with capital, right? They don't see it that way. They see ways to generate revenue. And the problem with that is it drives people away. I mean, in the UK, we had just a rumor of a wealth tax at the last budget that was only a few months ago, a month or two ago. And what that did was drive a lot of people to leave the UK, because they've got capital, but it's tied up in assets, which most people who, if you realize and understand the economics and inflation, you're going to invest in assets, because that's how you beat inflation. So wealthy people have got their money in assets. That's how they generally grow their wealth. And then if you start talking about wealth taxes or unrealized gains taxes, they want to run away from that because that puts a cage around them, a big cage around them that they can't get out of. You know, if the UK brought in a wealth tax, anyone wealthy within the UK is stuck in the UK. And if they want to leave the UK, they've got to pay a lot of money to do so. And that's not what you want, because that doesn't encourage capital growth. That stagnates it. That's, you know, it forces it to leave for a start. And when they leave, you force them to never come back, because they're never going to come back if they have to pay a wealth tax. So, and again, new people that want to come to the UK, and I'm using the UK as an example where it applies to any country, but you know, you'll have foreign countries where someone might go, right, I'm going to go open a business in the UK because it's a booming economy. It's a, you know, it's got the FTSE 100, all of these things. You might look at it and say that's a good place to go. If you've got a wealth tax, well, actually, why would I go and generate capital in the UK? Because all they're going to do is tax me on that capital before I even realize it, before I take it. They're going to tax me on it, and that's going to make me stagnate and not be able to grow my capital more. Reinvestment, all of those things. So I think it's an absolutely true point.
I found something. I want to show this to you. I don't know how accurate or like how recent this is, but I talked with other people around that was also fairly recent, and I just don't know how recent this one in particular is. That the net outflows and inflows of millionaires. There we have the United Kingdom in the sandwich of China, India, South Korea, Russia. And it's like the UK shouldn't be with those countries, with China and India and South Korea. I know why Chinese millionaires are fleeing the country. I know why Indian millionaires are fleeing the country, especially because I have an Indian girlfriend also. Russia, I can also see. And I know why they are going to the United States, to the UAE, Singapore, Canada is weird. But like they fleeing there. I think Malta, I also recently heard Malta in the EU seems to be also very attractive these days for millionaires. And this is, like, if I see this as a politician that is in the UK, all red flags should like really alarm me. Of like, we have to do something very different in the UK. This should not be the case that so many people leave. Now, there's a few things that go on in the UK. There was also the Brexit. I don't know if that has had anything to do with that, or like people fleeing the country or not. I'm not sure. I'm not a fan at all of the EU, but I don't know what the effects of the Brexit was also in the United Kingdom. But this is not a good development.
Not at all. So I think I read a similar stat yesterday that at the moment it's hundreds of millionaires every day are leaving the UK. So it's not a good stat. I think a lot of it is down to tax. Taxes. So what you have is millionaires generally are happy to pay tax. They've got no problem with paying tax. But when you are increasing the amount they pay very gradually, they start to grow resentment towards that. And to your point, what I would say, and I haven't got a graph for this, but I'd say the lifestyle in the UK has declined. Crime has probably gone up in certain areas. Definitely, I can talk for my area. It's gone up in London. People will tell you it hasn't, but it certainly has. Immigration is a big problem over here, and I'm not saying immigration is a problem in terms of people coming into the country legally. I think illegal immigration is a problem. I don't have a problem with immigration, but I do have a problem with having a daughter who walks around on the street when there's illegal immigrant males, criminal males walking the street who can't be traced. I don't know. I haven't got stats for how much of that's going on, but that's sort of the issues that we're seeing. And I think the lifestyle one's a good point, because people are paying more and getting less. And if you're a capital investor in any way, paying more and getting less just doesn't work for you. You know, if you're a millionaire and you've made all your money through making, you know, assets appreciate, if you realize that your lifestyle is getting worse, but you're paying more for it, well, you're going to look at that. And then when you bring in, I talked about it a bit earlier, but there was a big rumor last year about a wealth tax. Well, every single one of those millionaires would have got tax advice, and their tax advisor would have said, if a wealth tax comes in, you are stuck. Because I'll use a real crude example. If I've got 10 million pounds in assets that I've never paid a penny of tax on, let's say I invested 2 million, built it to 10 million. I've got 8 million of unrealized gains there. So I'm a millionaire, but I've never really realized that I've got 10 million of assets. I'm probably living like I've got 10 million of assets, but I've got 8 million of unrealized gains. A wealth tax suddenly slams that if I want to leave, I've got to pay tax on 8 million pounds. So tax on 8 million pounds, probably a percentage, you know, somewhere around 20%, close to 2 million pounds. That's a big tax number. If that's a fifth of my wealth is going to be eaten up by a wealth tax or an exit tax. So people would have run thinking, well, I'm going to leave before they implement that. So those sorts of things just really cement that fact. That coupled with the fact our government is not working in the UK, being quite frank, they're just not. One of the biggest things I have, Robin, is in the UK, when we elect someone, you have what's called a manifesto. A manifesto, it says what they're going to do if you vote for them. If they come into power, it's what they're going to do. The government that we have lied on their manifesto. They said they will not raise taxes. They've raised taxes twice since they've been in power already. The fact that there's no repercussions for that is scary to me, because how can someone tell me they want me to vote for them, this is what they're going to do, but actually just lie about it in total, you know, total lies. And then if I vote for them, they get into power, they do the exact opposite of what they've said anyway. I've got nothing that I can do. You lied to me. You stole my vote from me, but there's nothing they can do. So I think when you couple all of that together, things are getting worse. The government is getting worse. There's no way, people can't see a way out of the problems that we've currently got. And that's, again, specifically for the UK. And I think that's where I would be as a person. I mean, I speak to clients all the time who've left the UK. I spoke to someone yesterday who's moved to Portugal, and they said, I haven't moved necessarily for tax. I haven't moved necessarily for education or all these things. I've moved because I get a better lifestyle, and I'm worried about where the UK is going, not just where it is, but where it's going, because it's not getting any better. It's only getting worse. And sort of to what I said earlier, I think to get better, things have to get even worse than they are now. If someone came in and said to me, right, I'm going to make things better, but for the next 5 years, it's going to be pretty hard, that would make sense to me. No one can tell me they could come into power tomorrow and fix the UK, because they couldn't. So that worries me, because until someone comes in and says that, we're 5 years from getting better. So that's just getting worse by the day.
That's crazy. And this is literally what I hear from almost everyone in the UK. I found even something more recent, and it just makes the problem for the UK even double as big. They're saying that in the 2025, twice as many high net worth individuals were leaving the UK than in 2024. So like from 2024 to 2025, it literally doubled, and the UK is now ahead of China. More people leaving the UK, high net worth individuals leaving the UK, than high net worth individuals leaving China. I just wanted to bring that because like this is a more recent study from 2025. Like it seems like the whole 2025 data is in there. Then the study that they did in 2024, it just like reiterates the point that I think the UK has a problem. I'm not 100% sure wherever the problem lays. As you said, like the outlook for the country, the way of living. You can live cheaper and better in Malta, in Portugal, in Spain, and you don't have to deal with the UK, which is quite interesting actually to witness. Man, this is crazy.
I think the other problem there is from an economics point of view. What we're seeing in the UK is a lot of the narrative that comes out is attacking wealth, that wealthy people should pay more. But actually, I think I read a stat, and I might be slightly off with my figures here, but I think I read a stat that 1% of the 1% wealthiest in the UK pay something like 80% of the tax, right? So they already pay a significant proportion of the tax that comes in, the tax revenues. But people don't realize that. They think that because they earn more or have more, they should pay a higher percentage. Now, what they do inevitably when you say that is they leave. They just go elsewhere. And what that does is it creates less business, less revenue in terms of our businesses have less revenue because there's less people to spend their money. There's less tax coming in because they're not paying tax in the UK anymore. you know, there was a one specific case of the guy. I think he founded Revolut, and he was his stake in Revolut is worth something like 4 billion, and he's gone to the UAE now. So what that means is the UK lost about 1 billion's worth of tax revenue in one person, because the policies were just not good enough to keep him in the UK. But no one sees that as a problem, and it is a problem, and it's happening so much that we're losing. You know, all that happens now is the pool of highest taxpayers gets smaller, and therefore the burden of their tax that they were paying comes to the rest of us. So that's economics as a basic. So therefore they have to raise taxes going forward, and I think we're going to see more tax rises. And I don't know where that goes, because I don't see how people can pay more tax at the basic level and have a lifestyle in the UK. But it's going to have to happen because the numbers don't add up.
You are, I think, 100% sure of, like, aware of the Laffer curve, and I think it's an amazing display of, like, why a higher tax rate doesn't mean more money for the government. I will let you explain what the Laffer curve is. Probably you can do it better than me, but it's like it's one heck of a crazy thing.
I would always recommend. ChatGPT gave me the best description of a Laffer curve ever, and I'd love to go get it again. I haven't got it in front of me, but it's the basic economies of scale. You know, you don't, by getting more tax, you don't get by increasing taxes, you don't get more revenue. That's the general principle of it. You know, like I said earlier, when I talk about progressive tax policies a lot, and that's because I think progressive tax policies. I don't know if you're aware that there's a woman in the UK who was Prime Minister for a very short time called Liz Truss. Liz Truss, I met her recently at a Bitcoin event. She's actually really switched on, really clever. When she came into power in the UK, she tried to reduce taxes and she got laughed out. And actually, I think if she'd have been allowed to reduce the taxes the way she were, the UK would probably be in a better position today. The Laffer curve explains all of those things. And I think it's something that if I could teach it to MPs and sit in the Westminster and show it to them, it would be a great advantage, because I just think the Laffer curve explains everything we've just talked about in the TLDR summary, really.
Yeah, and this is really great. When I heard the Laffer curve, I was like, oh, wait, that makes so much sense. Basically, when you have, obviously, at tax rate 0, you have no tax revenue. So, like, if the government has 0 taxes, they also don't make any money. Then as they increase the tax rate, they get more revenue. But at some point, people getting fed up by how high the tax rate is. So they either leave the country, they cheat on the tax on the tax forms, or they just stop making more money. And as you said, like with the 100K, like if you're incentivized to stop at 100K, you will stop at 100K because you already can live comfortably. So in many cases, I think we are at this Laffer curve here somewhere, where if you reduce actually the tax rate, you actually can increase the tax revenue for a specific country. And actually, at the last election, only one party leader in Austria said that. And I was like, he is one that I should probably vote for, because he's the only one that actually talked in an interview before the election that reducing tax rates will increase tax revenue. And I'm like, he gets it. Like this is someone that actually understands basic of economics. Everyone else is like, yeah, we have a problem with our budget. We have to increase taxes to get more money so we can balance the budget. I'm like, that's such a stupid calculation. Like, you have no clue how economics works.
I 100% agree. And that's why I said to you earlier that MPs should be basic level economics and understand it, because it's not just about what, you know, again, what's their remit as an MP? Their remit is to make the country a better place. And by doing so, it's not as simple as increasing percentage increases revenues, because it makes a less efficient population. I mean, I see it all the time. I speak to a lot of people who work in the NHS and a lot of surgeons. And what I've seen in the UK is a lot of surgeons actually reduced, if they haven't left the UK, they reduce the amount of hours they work, which means that there's less available surgeons in the UK. And they'd sort of go, well, you know, it's not they're not making as much money by working the extra day, but what they are doing is making a less percentage for working that extra day, which means that the money that they're making per hour as such is less to them. So therefore, if they reduce it one day, the percentage they take home is higher for working 4 days than it is for working 5 days. And they quite often work on those metrics because they earn a good wage. They're quite happy working one less day a week. They've got but what that means, the ripple effect is, first of all, less overall revenue. But second of all, that's one less surgeon available to our health service. And then, you've got to couple that with the fact that they can go to other countries, get better lifestyles, earn as much money. It's not even, I think one of the things I learned in life is it's not just about how much you pay. It's about the lifestyle you get for how much you pay. You talked earlier about how beautiful Austria is and how beautiful the lifestyle is there. I wouldn't say I have a beautiful lifestyle here. I'd say I'm quite lucky, and I'd say it could be much worse. But I'd certainly say that for what I pay tax-wise, I could get a better lifestyle elsewhere. And that's probably quite key to me and my family.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. Yeah, 100%. It's I was hating a lot on Austria like maybe 7-8 years ago, and then I started traveling, and now I really like that everything is very tidy, that we have extremely good water. I cannot drink water from many other countries. The water in Austria is like so good. And
Switzerland, I love the water in Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland is one of the only countries that they can really compete with that. Maybe even like being a little bit better. And Switzerland also has less taxes, but the cost of living is a lot higher.
I was going to say, yeah, cost of living is a little bit higher, right?
It's like the taxes, the taxes are like lower a little bit. Like for example, corporate tax is like I think 10% lower than in Austria, depending on what canton in Switzerland you are, because like it depends on where in Switzerland you live, and the corporate tax in Austria is in whole Austria the same. But the cost of living is about twice as much, depending on what you buy, maybe even like 3 times as much in Austria. So there's like a hidden tax of like cost of living. There's also something that like, obviously that's not a direct tax that the government gets or something like that, but cost of living is also something you should consider when choosing the country you're residing in, because this is almost a tax. If you have zero taxes, if you have zero sales tax, but you pay 3 times as much for food, for the same amount of food and the same quality of food, like take the thing with the taxes because it's cheaper for you.
No, I totally agree. So, and that's all the things that you sort of have to factor in, because I've been to Australia a few times, and over there, their tax rates are they're very similar to the UK in the way they feel about taxes and politicians, etc. I've always said that in many ways, though, they pay the same for a better lifestyle. So, you know, the food is expensive, but food being expensive is only the same as the UK. It's not better. I thought that I did a lot of research into Dubai as well, and obviously a lot of people go to Dubai and they pretty much pay no tax there, right? But the lifestyle is probably 10-20% more cheaper, which more expensive, which effectively is a tax in a roundabout sort of way. So you have to factor all of those things in. I always say it is so much about lifestyle. I mean, I haven't been to Austria, so it's going to add to my list now you've just said that. But one thing I saw in Switzerland when I went to Lugano was, yes, it is more expensive, but at the same time, the lifestyle there is really good. They do have a really good lifestyle, beautiful way of living. So I think that's really important as well. I think that's where the UK is failing massively.
I describe Austria as, I mean, it highly depends where in Austria you are, probably also in Switzerland. But for me, Austria is maybe 10%, like Switzerland is 10% nicer than Austria, but like 200% more expensive than Austria. So like if you really like Switzerland, most likely you will be you will be loving Austria. The only thing is, in Austria, there's the EU. Now, most parties, especially the biggest party in Austria, actually is very against the EU. And a lot of regulations come from the EU, getting dampened a lot in Austria. So it's not as bad, but still you have to consider, if you really don't like the EU, you pay a higher tax for cost of living in Switzerland, but you get a country without the EU. Now there are some voices that I hear that Switzerland slowly gets closer and closer to the EU from people that are living in Switzerland. I hope that's not the case. But yeah, like there's a lot of different things to consider. But if you really like Switzerland, there's a good chance that you really like Austria.
We need a Bitcoin event in Austria then.
Yeah, 100%. I actually, at some point, if not a good one comes, I will just like do it myself. Because we had one really big one, but German speaking, not English. I would like to have a big English speaking conference in Austria. I might even combine it in the future somehow with BTC Prague, because Prague and Vienna is one direct train from each other, and the train is just like 4 hours. So you can literally drive from Vienna to Prague in 4-hour train ride, super cheap. It's like 20 euros or something like that, or 30. And having a pre-conference in Vienna, just like one day before Prague, and just like coming together, have some like special thing. Like not this year, but might come next year. I'm thinking and actually planning a little bit for that.
I will mention it to Martin and Matthias when I speak to them as well, and I will say that's a great idea, because I think that's a really, really good idea. And I'd be happy to speak there if you'll have me.
Austria is the home, like Vienna is the home of Austrian economics, and so having something there, like I think would be really cool. Yeah, I'm also speaking actually with Martin and Matthias, both of them in January, and I probably bring them the idea as well. I was like, hey, like, I think this could be really cool as a side event, as a pre-event for BTC Prague, because I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin Prague.
Me too.
There's one question that I ask each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin? I will add with you, and besides taxes.
It's a great question. And I feel like one of the things that I find really interesting, we talked about the community earlier, and I'm sidestepping a little bit, but one of the things I find really interesting is that when people like you and I speak as Bitcoiners, those shared values that we have almost align us so much. It's something I've found astounding about the community, because I get on with Bitcoiners so much more than some of my fiat friends, I'd call them, because we have so many shared values in what the world really is and how money really works and all of those things we can talk about. What would someone learn from me outside of all of those things? Well, I think that's really difficult. I mean, I think one of the things I spoke about here is probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the past couple of years, that is, life is about how you live, not what you spend money on. And what I mean by that is, we talked about lifestyle a lot, and I think lifestyle is something that we as people, or certainly in my world, in the finance world, we miss a lot. We have this quest to make money or or become millionaires or whatever it might be. But actually, what can really be valuable is the life that you lead, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's travel, whatever it is. The lifestyle you lead it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And if you can live your life like that, I spent a lot of time building my business. I spent, 15 hours a day working, and I realized that actually I already had everything I needed at home, which meant me, to me, that meant the most that I could ever have. Because once I realized that, the journey became more fun. I could enjoy it rather than looking at the destination. And I think a lot of people miss that. I think from me in the UK, I've spoke to so many, high net worth clients that want to leave. And when they've left, they might have gone to Dubai, for example, because it was an easy option. And when you go to Dubai, it's not for everyone. It's not the lifestyle that everyone wants. And people go there for tax reasons, but then they get there and they realize, actually, it's not what I want out of life. And that's what I mean by that. You don't have to choose a place based on what you're going to pay. Choose a place on what you're going to get for what you pay. And then you might be happy with what you pay anyway. So that's why, I mentioned Australia earlier. I've traveled to Australia extensively. It's a bit far for me to live with the family, but if I was going to go there, I'd be happy to pay the tax that I'm paying now because the lifestyle is so much better. I think that's the key for me. I think that's probably the one thing I'd tell anyone.
I like that point. And I dislike Dubai for the same reason. Like I see the tax rate, I see the living standards there, I see the high quality of like food and all of that things, but I really do not like it. Almost feels like I'm living some kind of microwave. It's very hot. There is a lot of AC going on. Every time I'm there, I'm getting half sick from the ACs. It's like, I don't know. I don't feel good. I'm also a walking person. I really like cities where you can walk around a lot and not always have to be in the car, because like if you have like a walking distance of 20 minutes, I'd rather walk that than drive with the car or take public transport or taxi or something like that. And it's just not possible in Dubai or like Abu Dhabi to walk anywhere. And the greenery I miss a lot.
I agree. So one of the places that actually really surprised me and impressed me was Lugano. I know it's expensive to live there, but it's a beautiful place. You can walk around it, no problem. Obviously, it's Bitcoin friendly, which helps. But it's beautiful greenery, all of those things. It ticked a lot of boxes, and just being able to go to a restaurant, sit outside, even though it was October, Plan B, so it wasn't even summer. But it was beautiful. Just those sorts of things. I think I valued that a lot. I think that's really good. So Austria is definitely going to go on my list now.
Yeah, Lugano is actually something where I'm like, if Austria gets for some reason very unattractive, Lugano, if I can afford it, Lugano is actually on very high on my list. I was there, and you step out of the train, you look there and like, wow, where am I? Am I in paradise? Like it's like a castle. It's like the lake that looks almost like an ocean. It has a very nice feeling. The weather is very nice. It's very Italian focused, so the food is really good.
Really good.
I always love being in Italy because they really take their food very serious, and very high quality food and high quality standing of living. The public transport is amazing, very punctual, very nice, and so Switzerland is amazing. I think I can end it with that.
Definitely, I'll be back in Lugano in October. I can't wait.
Really, really cool. Also, one point that I wanted to say, like it's very nice that you mentioned like the goals and the things we are working always towards. There is a very big value in not having always those big goals and like I have to achieve this and be more grateful for actually what you already have. And being in that moment, it's super hard for me because I'm like goal getter. I'm like doing this and I want to achieve the next level. I want to get bigger and bigger and bigger and do this. But actually, just being present and like liking what you have already now and being satisfied with that, and then still just working every day to become just a little bit better, it became now a better strategy for me. I love that you brought that up.
I think so. For someone like yourself, you've got to self-appreciate because what you've done is amazing, right? You've achieved something that so many people have failed to do and would love to do. And you've got to pat yourself on the back for that every single day. And you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that being an accountant, I see all the time, right, is I see people start their business here, they grow it to here, and they sell it and exit, and then they go, they should be happy, right? They've made millions, but they're not. They sit there and go, well, what next? What do I do now? They've got enough money to go and live the rest of their life happily and well, but they don't want to because they've got no purpose. They feel empty. They get depressed. They struggle. The best example I can give, there was one gentleman I had who made about £10 million on selling his business. And he decided to continue working 1 day a week as a consultant, which was fine. But he bought a farm in Portugal. And he said it was the best thing he ever did, because he said he'd exited businesses before and he was always bored. He always said, oh, I'm not going to start another business. And then he started another business. But this time what he did was he bought this farm and he said, I'm busy every day. I've got things to do because it's a functional farm. It was an olive farm. He has to harvest all of the stuff. He had to rebuild a barn. And he said, I've got purpose every single day, but I enjoy it. If you can find that sense of purpose in what you're doing as well, that's key, because you can enjoy every day, right? You and I are both sitting here. We're technically working and we're getting to talk about these delightful things. And 6-7 years ago, I could only have dreamed of that. So it's fantastic. And you do have to appreciate those points, because at the end of the day, the destination's only one place, but the journey's the fun of it.
100%. I couldn't agree more. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you, I think, a very suiting question. Is an emergency cash fund a good idea for Bitcoiners?
Do you know what? This is something I battle with myself all the time, because I don't see the value in fiat money, but running a business specifically, you have risk, right? So it depends on, the answer is, it depends on your personal circumstances. If you don't ever want to sell Bitcoin, that I don't, and there's an element of risk that your income could potentially stop tomorrow for any given reason. I'm self-employed. So if I got hit by a bus tomorrow and was hospitalized, potentially my revenue stops. So if I had no cash, I'd have to sell investments. So I think you have to look at that on a personal basis. I'd love to have no cash because inflation erodes it away. I could have a 6-month emergency fund, as I'd call it. I think everyone should have a 6-month emergency fund, really, in whatever capacity. But I could have a 6-month emergency fund. That could be £30,000 in cash. And I'm watching inflation erode that money away. But I have to have it, because if something happens, I cannot cover that. If I had it in Bitcoin and Bitcoin dipped a significant percent, I'd be selling at a loss that I don't want to sell at. So you have to look at it based on personal circumstances. But I think you have to cover every eventuality in life. So I think that you should have some cash reserves, yes. But I understand why a true Bitcoiner would battle with that every single day.
Yeah, it's about not being forced to sell Bitcoin also.
Correct.
Just like diving through periods where, I don't know, your car breaks down, you have to pay for something, and not being able to force sell your Bitcoin because then there's a capital gains tax bill, or there is or the Bitcoin price dips, then you don't have to pay capital gains tax, but you lost a lot of purchasing power with that. So there's all those reasons why I personally also think, and I still working towards that because I realized that like about 3-4 months ago, that emergency cash fund is very, very important. And then there's a question, do you want to have 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year? And I think everyone has to look at his own life and figure out what makes sense for him. But like, you should have something.
You definitely should have something. I do understand it as a Bitcoiner. I totally get it, and it is, like you say, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. But you have to cover that eventuality of what if. I'm guilty of it. I sit there and go, well, it's not going to happen to me, but it's not going to happen to you until it does happen to you. So it's one of, and especially at the moment, because the way I see it at this moment is Bitcoin is so undervalued, and I'm like, I want to buy as much as I can while I can at these prices, because I still see that the next 1, 2, 3 years, I think we're going to see big moves, and it's going to be a lot harder to buy it when it's 250 grand compared to when it's under 100 grand. So I keep thinking, oh, I need to stack as much as I can now. But at the same time, you need cash for those eventualities, definitely.
100%. Thank you so much, Robin, for being on the show. It was lovely speaking with you, and I think we learned a lot about taxes and the future of Bitcoin. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
So I'm the Bitcoin and crypto accountant on X. So you can find me on there. Search for the Bitcoin and crypto accountant. I should come up. You can contact me. My business is By the Book Accountancy Limited in the UK. So I'm bythebookaccountancy.co.uk. Or I know Bitcoiners won't like this, but I have got a website that's cryptotaxhelp.co.uk as well.
Really cool. Thank you so much for being on. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back.
Thanks,
I'll be
Robin.
back. Not tomorrow. I'll be back. I still have the old outro in me. I'll just be back. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.